and from the fear and from the hard bondage wherein thou was made to serve, and thou shalt take up this proverb against the king of Babylon. And then he goes into something else, right? But like I said, it's going to go into the book of Proverbs, the 37th chapter. Sorry, it was Ezekiel. In fact, I'll start in I'll start in the book of Ezekiel, the 37th chapter, and I go back to the 36th chapter, because he made a somewhat of a good point, although he didn't really understand it when he came up, right? Speaking about the dead, like when Yahushua was on the sea, he basically said, "Let the dead bury the dead," right? So you know, you're gonna be people that's gonna be waking up to this truth, and they're gonna have the sinew, as we're gonna see in the scriptures, come upon them, which is this truth, which is the flesh, man. Right? Because when you go into the book of Revelations, the 11th chapter and the 8th verse, right? It says Revelations 11:8, and says, "And their dead bodies shall lie in the street of the great city, which is spiritually called Sodom and Egypt," right? Where also the Lord was crucified. Because when you're in the land of America, that's where the name of the Lord was crucified. That's where it was X'd out from the people. That's why it says, "Well, the Lord was crucified there." So although he wasn't physically crucified within the land of America, which is known as Babylon within the scriptures, right? It was though his name was crossed out, and now you have it to where certain ones that started off with Nate, pretty much saying with IUIC, pretty much saying that, you know, you ain't gonna fear the name of the Lord and all of that, right? But even the people of the world, you gotta know you gotta fear the name of the Lord. You gotta preserve. You gotta have some respect to the name of the Most High. Even the people of the world know that. Right now, it went further to where you have different groups saying that the Lord even exists in the first place, man. Right? Basically, taking away, you know, the hope of the people, man. Because that's all we have to hope, that the Most High, like it says in Isaiah the 63rd chapter, the Most High is gonna come back and pretty much wreak all kind of havoc, man. Right? Because he's not coming back peaceable, man. He's not coming back with daffodils, like I said, man. He's coming back mad, man. Right? But this is talking about kind of going on the same lesson that I was going on. I got sidetracked, and I might get into that a little bit later on. You know, Esau and Jacob, and Esau going into captivity. But really, this all talks about the same thing, right? But speaking on the Negroes, Hispanics, Native Americans, the Israelites, it says, "And their dead bodies shall lie in the streets of the great city, which is spiritually called Sodom and Egypt." So spiritually called Sodom and Egypt. Why so? Because you got all kind of wickedness that happens in the land of America. That's why it's known as spiritually Sodom and spiritually Egypt. Right? That's where the Negroes, Hispanics, Native Americans, that's where the Negroes first and foremost served hardcore bondage. That's why it's known as spiritually Egypt, right? Because Egypt is just a word synonymous with slavery, man. Right? And it's called spiritually Sodom because you got all kind of faggotry and homosexuality happening in that land, man. Right? And it says, and it says, "And they of people and kindreds and tongues and nations shall see their dead bodies 3.5 days, and shall not suffer their bodies to be put in graves." Right? It says, and they that dwell on the earth shall rejoice over them and make merry and send gifts to one another, because they have tormented the two prophets, them that dwell on the earth. And after 3.5 days, the spirit of life from the Most High. Right? And I believe it's we go into John 6:63. Where it talks about the spirit, right? Which is really this word, man, right? Right, so this is the book of John 6:63, and it says, "It is the spirit that quickeneth, the flesh profiteth nothing. The words that I speak unto you, they are spirit and they are life." So the words of the scriptures, man, they are spirit and they are life. So when we out here, you're watching us, you're watching the men of the Lord on YouTube land, right? Or you're watching us in the physical form, man. The words that we speak out of this book, they're a spirit and life, man. That's what's going to restore life unto you, right? As just like how it says here in Revelations, the 11th chapter and the 8th and the 10th verse on down, it says, furthermore, the 11th verse on down now, it says, and after 3.5 days, the spirit of life from the Most High entered into them. So the word of the Most High came back into us by way of the elders, right? By way of the elders above them, right? That's how, you're seeing Jake rise up now, right? And they're standing before their oppressors, man, right? Telling their oppressors they're gonna go into hardcore bondage underneath the Negroes, Hispanics, Native Americans. Telling them, just like how it says in Wisdom of the Solomon, the 5th chapter, man, right? Then shall the righteous man stand in great boldness before such as afflicted him. That's what we're doing. That's all that goes hand in hand with the prophecies, right? It says, and after 3.5 days, right, the Spirit of the Lord entered into them, right, and they stood upon their feet, right, and great fear fell upon them that saw. So, although these people come and walk and talk all kind of madness, man, really it's great fear that drives them, man, right? Because when you go into the prophecies, we know that right at the end, when the Most High starts raising up his men to be out here putting the word, that's what's really going to be the end of their precious society, man, and really the uprising of our society. And we're going to see that a little bit later on. In fact, it'll be good to touch on that now before I go into the book of Ezekiel 37th, rather more than 36th, but I'll start from the 37th, and I'll touch on the destruction of Esau, and go into the book of Isaiah, Ezekiel the 36th, and we're going to see how the Most High is going to lift up the house of Israel, right? So this is the book of Ezekiel the 37th chapter, and the first verse, it says, and the hand of the Lord was upon me, and he carried me out in the spirit, and he set me down in the midst of a valley which was full of bones, right? And that's talking about the same thing I was talking about in Ezekiel, in Revelations the 11th chapter, right? Because America's known as that is spiritually Sodom and spiritually Eden, right? Like I said, because of the homosexuality and because of the slavery of the Negroes, Hispanics, Native Americans. But also it's also known as a valley because it's a low land, man. It's a morally low place, man, right? It says, and sent me down in the midst of the valley, which was full of dry bones, right? And he caused me to pass by them round about, and behold, there was very many in the open valley, and lo, they were very dry. And that's how we all was when we was in the world, right? It said, and he said unto me, Son of man, can these bones live? And I answered, Thou knowest. And he said unto me, Prophesy unto these bones, and say unto them, O ye bones, hear the word of the Most High. So and that's the purpose of the men of the Lord, man. We're basically lifting up your dry bones, just like how we was dry bones, right? It's all starting with the elders, right? And it says, and I will lay sinew upon you, and I'll bring up flesh upon you, and cover you with skin, and put breath in you, and you shall live, and you shall know that I am the Lord, right? And so I prophesied, and there was a great news and a great noise and shaking, so the bones came together to a bone to his bone, right? And that was just metaphorical of what the men of the Lord was going to do, right, in the day that we're in right now. And just to end this particular segment of the video before I go into the flip side of that, the destruction of Esau, right? And we'll just touch on the Wisdom of Solomon, the 5th chapter real quick, right, which I quoted a little bit earlier on. Right, so this is Wisdom Solomon, the 5th chapter and the 1st verse on down. It says, Then shall the righteous man stand in great boldness, and that's what we're doing right now, man. We're standing in great boldness, right? It says, stand in great boldness before the face of such as afflicted him, and made no account of his labors. Right, and that's going back to the point I was making earlier on about you Negroes, Hispanics, Native Americans being captives, right, under Esau, under the Edomites, under these different nations, man. Right, and the world was made for our sakes, man. We don't really possess an inheritance there, man. Right, but as we know and as we're gonna see, Esau's gonna be destroyed, and once Esau's destroyed, the world's gonna go back into a righteous balance, man. right? And it says, and when they see it, they shall be troubled with terrible fear. They shall be amazed at the strangeness of his salvation, right? And what's the strangeness of the salvation of the Negroes, Hispanics, Native Americans? It's gonna be those chariots, right? Because the Most High is gonna send his them celestial bodies to basically lift up the Negroes, Hispanics, Native Americans, right? By the way of his UFOs and all of that, man. So it's gonna be a strange thing to you people, but we've seen it in the script, in his prophecies here, right? And we're prepared for that, and we're waiting, right? And I believe it's in the book of Zechariah, right? Let's go to the book of Zechariah, 12th chapter maybe. Because those chariots ain't, those so-called UFOs ain't only gonna, I mean, Esau doesn't spend billions and billions of dollars, sending up them NASA spacecraft into there just to investigate nothing, man. They're trying to work out a way to stop what's gonna be read in the scriptures here, right? Because them chariots, like the Most High deals with balance, man. The Most High is not only just gonna save people, he's gonna be destroying some people. To save some people, he's gonna be destroying some other people, man. Right, to have mercy, you have to have no mercy. Right? It's going to be in the book of Zechariah. I believe it's in the 12th verse, but I may be wrong. Right, this is Zechariah, the 4th chapter, rather more the 5th chapter, and the first verse on down, talking about the strangeness of the salvation of the Negroes, Hispanics, Native Americans. It says, then I turned and lifted up mine eyes and looked, and behold, a flying robe. Right, so he saw a small chariot. You're going to see it, that it was a small chariot. It says, and he said unto me, what seest thou? And I said, and I answered, I see a flying robe, the length thereof is 20 cubits, the breadth is 10 cubits, right? And I believe a cubit is about just under half a meter, if I remember my numbers correctly, right? So this was a small chariot. It says, and then he said unto me, this is the curse that goeth forth over the whole face of the earth, for everyone that stealeth shall be cut off, as on the other side according to it, and everyone that sweareth shall be cut off as on the other side according to it. So that's the curse that the Most High is going to bring forth, man. Those chariots are going to be part of the cursing, part of the bringing down of the society, right? Those UFOs, man, they're going to be doing some fireworks, man. They're going to be popping up, man, right? Killing you heathen, man, right? Which is a beautiful thing, because the Negroes, Hispanics, Native Americans have been subject underneath these heathens for this time. You got it to where certain jakes even think that they're equivalent. Whether that dude that came up a little bit earlier on was a Jake, it's not for me to know, but he's coming up the wrong way, man. Right? But certainly you have it to where among our own people, you got explicitly, the Negroes darker than fucking, Wesley Snipes or some shit, and they believe they're equal with the so-called white man. Right? But this is the curse that goeth over the whole earth. It says, and I'll bring it forth, saith the Lord of hosts, and it shall enter into the house of the thief, and into the house of him that sweareth falsely by my name, and shall remain in the midst, and it shall consume him with the timber thereof and the stones thereof. So that's what's going to be that consuming fire that's going to come out. Right? Now going back into Wisdom of Solomon, the 5th chapter and the 3rd verse, it says, rather more the 2nd verse, it says, and when they see it, they shall be troubled with terrible fear, and shall be amazed at the strangeness of his salvation, so far beyond what they look for. Right? Because people right now think the Lord's gonna come back and it's gonna be merciful and all of that, man. And everybody's gonna be all right. That's a lie, man. That's a myth. Right? They're really the elites, right? The elites of this society know that they ain't gonna be in a peaceful state, man. They know that the return of the Lord is gonna yield the destruction of their kingdom, man. And like I said, that's why they're doing all kind of research into NASA and all of that, man, to try to kind of prolong their kingdom. right? He says, and they repenting and groaning for anguish of spirit shall say within themselves, this is he whom we had sometimes in derision. So you can see really the heavy subtopic here, right, is going to be is the retribution for all of the hell that you Negroes, Hispanics, Native Americans done for, man. Right? That's going to be that's the underlying topic here, because every scripture the Spirit's got me to read really is going to be been talking about the reversal, the flipping of the tables, man. Right? The possessor, all right, being possessed, man. Right? It says, they repenting and groaning for anguish of spirit shall say within themselves, this is he who we had in sometimes derision, a proverb and a reproach, man. And that's how the Negroes and Hispanics, Native Americans are looked at in this society, man. The Israelites, whether they look like Negroes, Hispanics, Native Americans or not, man. Yeah. Right? They're a proverb and a reproach in this society. And his king says, we fools have counted his life of madness, right? And his end without honor. How is he numbered amongst the children's? How is he numbered amongst the children of the Most High, and his lot amongst the saints? It says, therefore have we erred in the way of truth. The light of righteousness has not shined on us, right? And the sun of righteousness has not rose upon us, right? Let me jump back into the destruction of Esau. We're gonna see real quick what the Most High is gonna do. In fact, I might just go straight into it, right? Book of Ezekiel, the 36th chapter, right? Because the Most High really doesn't do. He's not going to do all of this. He's not going to really. He's not doing that for our sakes, man. Right? He's really doing it for the glory of His own name, so that the fear of the Most High will be returned back on the earth, man. Right? It says, also, son of man, prophecy unto the mountains of Israel, and say, ye mountains of Israel, hear the word of the Most High. Right? And the mountains just is indicative of a government, man. Right? And it says, and thus saith the Lord, because the enemy has said against you, even the ancient high places are our possession. You got these different fucking heathen out in the land of Israel right now, thinking that that's actually their land, man. Right? Fighting like it's actually their land, of which they're leasing.